Okay, in the previous lecture, we used log and ilog as well as the highly performant at and iat indexers to set values in our data frame. In this lecture, I wanted to discuss a warning that Pandas might throw at us when we try to update or set values in our data frames. So let's take a look. Say we want to change Peter Chess page views to 2001. So just one above our threshold for super popular. We saw how this could be done using log, ilog, at, or iat, but a fifth approach is to use square bracket indexing. And in fact, you are very likely to come across code that does assignments like this. So players, page views, right? So to change Peter's page views, we could start by isolating the page views column. And so now we have a series containing page views for all our players. And specifically to isolate Peter's number, we could simply chain another square bracket to extract from this resulting series. So now we say 2 here. And there we have it. There we have Peter's page views. So 1529, 1529. So now that we've isolated the value we want to update, we could go ahead and set it to the value we wanted to set, so 2001. And you will see this a lot in code. Okay, but we get this interesting warning here. It says a value is trying to be set on a copy of a slice from a data frame. So what's happening here? The reason we get this warning is because Pandas cannot guarantee that we are working with the actual underlying data frame when we do indexing like this, which is known as a chained indexing. And specifically, we're doing assignment using chained indexing. So you can call it chained assignment. Pandas doesn't know whether we're working with a copy or a view. It cannot guarantee it. Depending on how the memory is structured, we could be working with a copy of the data or a view to the underlying data frame. We will discuss this at length in the next lecture, but for now, I think it's important to realize that if we are working with a copy of the data frame, any change that we do to that copy does not change the underlying data. So Pandas has this warning to let us know that it cannot guarantee that the assignment that we're trying to do will actually happen in the underlying data frame. In this case, it might or it might not, depending on how the memory for our dataset is laid out. In fact, let's go ahead and check whether this took place. Right? So Pandas is warning that it cannot guarantee us that it took place, but we can confirm whether it did. So players.head, did Peter Chess update? Oh, yes, it did. So yeah, it did change. So in this case, given the structure of our data frame, we did get a view, and through our setting operation, we managed to change the underlying data frame. But this is not guaranteed. In fact, let's try to trigger this error in another way. Think of methods that we know return copies of our data frame. For example, remember when we talked about drop duplicates, right? So this is guaranteed to return a copy of the data frame. This is not our actual data frame. If we do not include the in-place parameter in this method call, we simply get a new data frame or a copy of the data frame from where the duplicates have now been excluded. So we know for a fact that this is, in case, a copy. Now, if we try to do assignment using this copy, so let's go ahead and chain page views here so that we extract page views. And then let's look at Peter Chess page views by looking at the label 2. So we're back to 2001 because we modified it. And let's try to set this to 3000 now. Now we're working with a copy, so we know we're going to trigger the same message because we're trying to do assignment on a copy with chained indexing to add. So in fact, we might get up. Okay, so we do get exactly the same error. Now, did the assignment take place? It's impossible. Right? It's still at 2001. Because in this case, we know drop duplicates returns a copy. Very nice. We'll pick up this topic again in the next lecture. But I wanted to mention that it is possible to turn this warning off by setting the chained assignment mode to none. So for example, in Pandas, we have some options. And if we go to options mode, chained assignment, it's currently been set to warn, which is why we get these warnings. But there's a couple of other options here. So one other option is none. If we want this to, so turns the setting with copy warning off, right? If we set this to none, we would not get this kind of warning anymore. Now, I've seen people set this to none so that they don't get this. I would strongly recommend against doing that. I think it's a very useful warning, and it serves to keep us mindful of whether we're working with a copy or a view, especially when the difference is important for what we are trying to achieve, as we saw with assignments. If we are trying to do an assignment, we want to know for a fact that Pandas guarantees that we're working with a view to the underlying data. So I find this warning very helpful. And with experience, we'll see that we'll trigger it less and less, because we'll know what methods to use. We'll develop a sense for whether we're working with a copy or a view. In the next lecture, we'll look more closely at the difference between views and copies, as well as come up with some general rules to guarantee that we avoid seeing this warning ever again.